You know the single biggest mistake first-time homebuyers make in this economy? They look at a house listed for $150,000 and they think they found a loophole. They think it is a steal. I look at that same house and I see a trap. When a house costs the same as a fully loaded pickup truck, you are not buying an asset. You are buying a liability. If the roof fails and costs $20,000 to fix, that is 13% of the home's entire value gone overnight. But here's the thing nobody tells you in the real estate brochures. The price tag is just the entry fee. The real cost is what happens when you try to leave. In the states we are talking about today, the sold sign is the rarest thing in town. Welcome to 2026. Last year, millions of Americans packed up and moved to cheaper states hoping to outrun inflation. This year, half of them are realizing they made a terrible miscalculation. We aren't just looking at crime statistics today. Any website can give you that. These are the states where the cost of living looks low on paper, but the cost of surviving there is bankrupting the middle class. From insurance markets that have completely collapsed, to medical deserts where an ambulance ride takes 45 minutes, to demographic death spirals, where there is literally no one left to buy your house. This is the list of the 10 states you simply cannot afford to enter in 2026. Number 10, West Virginia. We are starting with West Virginia because it represents the most dangerous temptation in America right now. The temptation of the $100 house. On Zillow, West Virginia looks like absolute paradise for a remote worker or a retiree on a fixed income. You see Victorian homes with wraparound porches selling for the price of a parking spot in New York City. It feels like you have hacked the system. It feels like you found the last affordable place in the country, but you haven't found a deal. You have just walked into a demographic funeral. Here is the hard data you need to know before you sign that deed. West Virginia is one of the only states in the union with a natural decrease in population. That means more people are dying than being born. The Census Bureau confirms this isn't just people moving away, although they are doing that too. It is a population that is literally shrinking from the inside out. Think about what that means for your equity. Real estate appreciation depends entirely on demand. It depends on a growing pool of buyers who want what you have. In West Virginia, your customer base is shrinking every single year. If you buy a house here today, who are you going to sell it to in 2030? There is no one coming. The economy here has struggled to pivot away from coal for decades. And while there are pockets of tourism and natural beauty, they don't sustain a housing market. The opioid crisis has hit this workforce harder than almost anywhere else in the industrialized world. It has created a zombie economy in some rural counties where the labor force participation rate is consistently at the bottom of the national rankings. That means fewer people working, fewer people paying taxes, and fewer services for the people who stay. So yes, your mortgage might only be $600 a month, but your property value is flatlining. Your local hospital is underfunded or closing because there aren't enough commercially insured patients to keep it open. And your internet connection is likely struggling to support that remote job you are banking on. West Virginia is a visually stunning state, but financially, it is a liquidity trap. Do not confuse cheap with value. Number 9, New Mexico. They call it the land of enchantment, and if you visit Santa Fe or Taos, you get it immediately. The sunsets are purple. The art scene is world class. The food is incredible, but you cannot live inside a postcard. The reality of living in New Mexico in 2026 is a daily battle with security. We aren't just talking about bad neighborhoods where you simply avoid one side of town. We are talking about a systemic crime issue that bleeds into everything. Consumer Affairs ranked New Mexico as the #1 worst state to live in for 2025. That is a heavy title, and it comes down to the Breaking Bad tax. That is what I call the hidden cost of securing your life here. In Albuquerque, property crime is not an if, it is a when. Auto theft is rampant, home break-ins are common, so you save money on property taxes compared to Texas, but you spend it on high deductible insurance plans. You spend it on private security systems. You spend it on replacing the window of your car that got smashed for the 3rd time this year. And then there is the education system. If you have kids or if you plan to, this is a deal breaker. New Mexico consistently ranks at the absolute bottom for education outcomes. We We're talking about reading proficiency and math scores that are tragic. This creates a vicious economic cycle. Companies don't want to move here because they can't find an educated workforce. So high-paying jobs are scarce outside of government and defense labs. Without high-paying jobs, the tax base suffers. And without a robust tax base, schools don't improve. It is a feedback loop. And if you move here, you are stepping right into the middle of it. You might find a cheap adobe house in the desert that looks like a dream, but you will pay for it with your peace of mind. The enchantment wears off pretty fast when you are filing your 4th police report in 6 months. The structural issues here run deep, and they are not getting solved in 2026. Number 8. New Jersey. This is a completely different kind of trap. This isn't a poverty trap. This is a middle-class prison. New Jersey is where high incomes go to evaporate. You might look at a salary offer in Jersey City or the suburbs and think you have made it. I am making 6 figures, you tell yourself. I am rich. In New Jersey, $100,000 is not rich. It is barely survival. The average home value hit nearly $570,000 in late 2025. That is a massive barrier to entry. But the mortgage isn't what kills you here. It is the property taxes. New Jersey has the highest effective property tax rate in the nation. We are talking about bills that can easily exceed $10,000 or $15,000 a year for a modest home. That is like paying a second mortgage just for the privilege of living there. You are paying luxury prices. But are you getting a luxury experience? Drive down the turnpike and tell me. You are paying for congestion. You are paying for aggressive driving. You are paying for infrastructure that is aging and overcrowded. The argument has always been access. You pay to be close to New York City or Philadelphia. But in 2026, with remote work becoming the standard for many high earners, that value proposition is broken. Why pay a premium to be 40 minutes from a city you only visit twice a month? It doesn't make math sense anymore. And for retirees, New Jersey is a no-go zone. The cost of living will eat through a fixed income faster than almost anywhere else. It is a state designed for high cash flow, not for wealth retention. You work hard, you make a lot of money, and the state takes most of it back before you can even invest it. That is why New Jersey consistently leads the nation in outbound migration for high earners. People make their money there and then they run. If you move there now, you are just replacing the people who were smart enough to leave. You are becoming the new liquidity for their exit strategy. Number 7, Mississippi. We have to talk about the healthcare desert. This is the single biggest risk factor for anyone over the age of 50. Mississippi consistently has the lowest cost of living in America. That is the headline you see on the blogs. Retire for pennies in Mississippi. But here's the question you need to ask. What is the cost of a heart attack? I don't mean the hospital bill. I mean the logistics. Mississippi ranks 51st, dead last, in health system performance. That data comes from the Commonwealth Fund in 2025. We are talking about rural hospitals closing their doors because they are bankrupt. We are talking about a shortage of specialists that is frankly terrifying. If you buy that cheap farmhouse in the Delta, you might be 2 hours away from a stroke center. That isn't an inconvenience. That is a death sentence. And it is not just the access, it is the outcomes. Mississippi has the highest rates of preventable deaths in the country. The infrastructure for staying alive just isn't there. And economically, the state is stuck. It relies heavily on federal aid to keep the lights on. The poverty rate is entrenched. Wages are atrophied. So yes, you can buy a house for a fraction of what it costs elsewhere. But you are paying with your life expectancy. What good is saving $500 a month on a mortgage if you can't get an ambulance when you need one? It is the ultimate false economy. You are trading your health for cheap square footage. And in 2026, that is a trade you will lose every single time. Do not let the low price tag fool you. The infrastructure is crumbling and the safety net has holes in it big enough to fall through. When the system fails you here, there is no backup plan. Number 6, Minnesota. This one hurts to say because Minnesota used to be the gold standard. It was the state that worked. High taxes, sure, but you got great services, safe streets, and good schools. That was the deal. But the deal has changed. Now you pay California-level taxes to live in Siberian weather. And the services? The safety? They aren't what they used to be. Let's look at the safety paradox. Official statistics from early 2026 might show homicide rates dipping slightly from their peaks. But talk to anyone living in Minneapolis. The perception of safety has shattered. Carjackings became a daily news item. The downtown area, which used to be vibrant, hasn't fully recovered. There is a feeling of unease that wasn't there 10 years ago. And you are paying a premium for this. Minnesota's income tax rates are punishing. You are handing over a huge chunk of your paycheck. And for what? For winters that last 6 months? For roads that are constantly under construction because the ice destroys them? For a social climate that has shifted from Minnesota nice to something much more divided? The value proposition is gone. If you are going to pay high taxes, go somewhere with a beach. Go somewhere where you don't need a survival kit in your car just to drive to the grocery store in January. Minnesota is currently experiencing a perception gap. Outsiders still think of it as the wholesome Midwest. Residents know it has become Minnesota expensive. Unless you have a very specific reason to be there, like family or a specialized medical job, it makes zero sense to move there in 2026. You take all the financial hits of the coast with none of the climate benefits. You are paying for a premium product that has been discontinued. Number 5, Michigan. From the cold of Minnesota, we move to the rust of Michigan, specifically the areas outside of the few trendy pockets like Ann Arbor. There is a narrative out there that Detroit is back. And sure, if you stick to about 5 square blocks downtown, it looks great. But zoom out. Michigan is the number 2 state for outbound migration in 2025. People are leaving. Why? Because the infrastructure is in a state of collapse. We all know about the Flint water crisis, but that wasn't a one-off event. It was a symptom of a statewide disease. The pipes are old. The roads are notoriously bad, some of the worst in the nation. The power grid is unreliable. When you buy a house in Michigan, especially an older one, you are buying a maintenance nightmare. You can buy a house for $50,000 in some areas. That sounds amazing, but the repairs to make it livable, the plumbing, the electrical, the foundation issues from decades of freeze-thaw cycles, that will cost you $150,000. And even after you fix it, the neighborhood values are suppressed. You will never get that money back. It is an equity sinkhole. The job market is still heavily tied to the auto industry, and that industry is volatile. When the plants shut down or shift production, entire towns go ghost. You don't want your financial future tied to a single industry that is currently undergoing an identity crisis. Michigan has incredible summers, some of the best lakes in the world. But you can visit a lake. You don't have to anchor your net worth to a state that is struggling to keep its bridges from falling down. It is a state that had its peak 50 years ago. Don't bet your future on its past. Nostalgia is not an investment strategy. Number 4, Louisiana. This is where the physics of the world meet the reality of your bank account. I love Louisiana. The culture, the food, the music. It is the most unique place in America, but you cannot live there anymore. Not financially. Louisiana is becoming the uninsurable state. This is the data point that matters more than anything else. Insurers are fleeing the state. They are canceling policies by the thousands. Data shows non-renewals increased by over 200% in recent years. If you can find insurance, it will cost you a fortune. And if you can't, you are forced onto the state's Citizens Plan, which is expensive and offers terrible coverage. Or worse, you go without insurance. Imagine owning a home in a hurricane zone with no insurance. That isn't investing, that is gambling, and the odds are not in your favor. The state legislature passed new laws in 2025 trying to entice insurers back, but mostly, those laws just make it harder for you to sue if your claim gets denied. The deck is stacked against the homeowner. And then there is the climate reality. The coast is eroding. Storms are getting stronger. You don't really own your home in Louisiana. The next Category 4 hurricane owns it. You are just renting it from Mother Nature, and she is an unpredictable landlord. Add to that a struggling economy that ranks near the bottom for opportunity. Add a crime rate in New Orleans that scares away businesses. It breaks my heart to say it, but Louisiana is a financial dead end. Visit for Mardi Gras, eat the crawfish, but do not sign a 30-year mortgage on a piece of land that might be underwater in 20. Your equity will drown long before the water rises. Number 3, Kentucky. Kentucky shares a lot of the same DNA as West Virginia, but with less of the mountain charm to distract you. It is a state that feels stuck. Economically, it is in the bottom tier. Health-wise, it is a disaster zone. Cancer rates, heart disease, obesity. Kentucky consistently leads the nation in all the wrong categories. But the real trap here is the small town isolation. Let me explain what that feels like. There is a sound that is very specific to these dying towns at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. Silence. Not the peaceful silence of a wealthy suburb where everyone is at work. It is the silence of emptiness, the silence of absence. You walk down Main Street. The storefronts aren't just closed, the glass is covered in dust. The only gas station is 20 minutes away. You realize something profound. Cheap has a price. You didn't just buy a house, you bought solitude. You bought isolation. If you are young, there is no one to date. If you are driven, there is no one to compete with. If you are social, there is nowhere to go. Kentucky has pockets of wealth around Lexington with the horse farms, but the vast majority of the state is functioning on life support. Federal aid keeps the lights on. If that aid ever stops, the state stops. You are buying into a system that cannot support itself. That is a fragile existence. You are one policy change away from disaster. Don't put your roots down in soil that can't feed you. You will find yourself withered on the vine. Number 2. Iowa. You might be surprised to see Iowa this high on the list. It seems harmless, right? Safe, quiet, cornfields. But in 2026, boring is an economic death sentence. Iowa is suffering from a massive brain drain. This is a factual crisis. The Common Sense Institute released a report showing that for every young graduate Iowa loses, the state loses over $4 million in lifetime economic activity, and they are losing them in droves. Iowa educates them, but Chicago, Minneapolis, and Denver employ them. If you move to Iowa, you are paying taxes to subsidize the workforce of other states. The people left behind are aging. Iowa is becoming a massive retirement community, but without the Florida weather. This creates a boredom death spiral. Young people leave because there is nothing to do and no high-growth jobs. Because they leave, businesses don't open new offices there. Because businesses don't come, the tax base shrinks. Because the tax base shrinks, amenities and schools suffer, which makes more young people leave. It is a cycle, and if you buy a house there, you are betting against that cycle. You are betting that suddenly Gen Z is going to want to move to Des Moines. Spoiler alert, they don't. You will have a safe house, you will have a quiet street, but your equity will flatline. You will never see the appreciation you would get in a growth state. You are parking your money in a savings account that pays 0 interest. In an era of high inflation, that means you are losing money every single day. Iowa is a great place to be from. It is a terrible place to move to. It is a state that is liquidating its future to pay for its present. Number 1, Alabama, the king of the value trap. Alabama looks incredibly cheap on paper. You can find mansions for the price of a studio apartment in California. Huntsville is booming with tech and defense jobs, and people point to that and say, look, it's growing. But Huntsville is an island. The rest of the state is drowning. Alabama ranks number 6 on the World Population Review's worst states list for a reason. The gap between the haves and the have-nots is medieval. You have defense contractors making huge salaries, and 5 miles away, you have poverty that looks like the 1950s. The infrastructure is failing. The healthcare system is ranked among the worst in the developed world. But the biggest reason it is number 1 on this list is the social tax. The politics and social divisions here are intense. It affects everything. It affects who moves here. It affects what companies invest here. It affects the quality of education your kids will get. Alabama has some of the lowest property taxes in the nation, but you get what you pay for. Or rather, you don't get what you don't pay for. You don't get good schools. You don't get safe roads. You don't get public services. You are on your own. And in 2026, being on your own is a dangerous place to be. If you lose your job, the safety net is non-existent. If you get sick, the hospital is underfunded. If you want to sell your house, the market is limited to people who are willing to accept all of these trade-offs. That is a small market. Alabama lures you in with low prices, but it traps you with low opportunity. It is the definition of a value trap. Don't fall for it. Don't let the low entry price blind you to the exit cost. So where does that leave us? The map of America is changing. It isn't just red states versus blue states anymore. It is viable states versus trap states. It is states that have a future and states that are clinging to the past. When you are looking at Zillow tonight, dreaming about that cheap house, remember this rule. Never move somewhere you cannot easily leave. If the market is paralyzed, if the population is shrinking, if the insurance companies are running away, you are walking into a cage. You hold the key right now, but once you sign that mortgage, you hand the key to someone else. 2026 is not a year for gambling. It isn't a year for seeing who has the biggest house. It is a year for agility. In economics, we call it liquidity. In real life, it is called freedom. Don't bury your freedom in dirt that is losing its value. Mobility is wealth. Keep your options open. Keep your engine running, and don't stop driving until you find a place that is actually growing, not just dying slowly.